Welcome to the Life You Love podcast.
We're your hosts, Grace Lemire
and Erin Convertini.
This podcast is for the dreamers and the doers.
For the women who want to create a life they genuinely love waking up to.
We believe that life's short, so let's build one we love.
We are quickly approaching the end of 2025, and while everyone's looking ahead to their New Year's goals, it is so important to spend time reflecting on the year you just had. Whether at a glance you felt like this was your best or worst year yet, you can find so much value in extracting lessons from the experiences you had this year. So that's exactly what we're doing in today's episode.
Every year at the beginning of the year, we always film like a New Year, New Goals episode, I think is what we always call it. And when I was preparing for this episode, I actually went back and I pulled out what we said in the first one that we did this year when we set our goals. It was so interesting to see what we said we wanted to do this year, especially I feel like for me, and if you've been listening to the podcast, you know how the year's gone, but which I'll talk about later. But it was really interesting just to like see what we said and reflect on it. So in today's episode, we're going to just take some time to reflect on the goals that we set and also some reflections that we have now being on the other side.
Yeah, we're going to talk through our 2025 goals that we set at the beginning of the year, kind of talk about where they landed and what goals changed or what ended up happening throughout the year. And then at the end of this episode, we each put together 3 major like takeaways, I would say, from the year and just going through our goals versus the experiences that we actually had. Like I said in the intro, you can learn a lot from trying to extract value from the experiences that you had instead of just quickly looking ahead to 2026 to set new goals. I think it is time. It is a good time to just reflect on the year that you had and try to get some takeaways and some lessons. So with that, let's get into some of our 2025 goals that we set at the beginning of the year. And we can kind of talk about which ones came to fruition, which ones changed, and all of that. Grace, do you want to kick us off?
Love to. Now, when we were like planning this episode, I was like, Erin, the year that I've had, I'm like, what do I even say? And I know if you have been listening to the podcast for a while, or if you follow me on specifically my Instagram, I think is where I talk about it more over my TikTok, you know the year that I've had. And I feel like it's not something that I need to hide. It's not something that I need to feel bad about. My health, I've had chronic health issues. If you're new to the podcast, just to give you the TLDR, I've had chronic health issues for the last 12 years. And the last 2, they took a really big dip, but especially this year. And it ended up resulting in 3 cancer scares. It was like so much testing, like scans and lab work and just all this crazy stuff. I had 3 different medical procedures, a surgery, and I ended up getting diagnosed with a chronic illness. And I still don't even have all the answers with my health situation. Like I still have things that I'm trying to resolve. And on top of that, like around $20,000 to $25,000 in out-of-pocket medical costs. Yeah. Was that what I really anticipated for 2025? Absolutely not. Like I went into this year being like, I just moved to Florida. I moved here in January and I was like, this is going to be the best year yet. I'm really going to just accelerate my life and, make leaps and bounds and accomplish my goals. Life just had a completely different way of working out. And when it ended up objectively, it was the worst year of my life. And I don't say that to be dramatic. I say that because it genuinely was. It was the worst year of my life. I would never want to repeat it. And I cannot wait for this year to be over so I can just be out of 2025. But when I looked back at the goals that I set, because I don't remember what I said back in January without like really looking back at the episode, it's funny because some of the things that I said, I think I ended up accomplishing a lot more of them than ones that I didn't accomplish. And just to kind of like rattle off a few things I said, I want to give more to others, give more of my time and give more of my money. And that is something that I've definitely done. I've given monetarily to a lot of things because I haven't been able to give my time a lot with my health to things. Although I have given more of my time. I said I wanted to find hobbies outside of my house to be more interesting. I wanted to foster a dog and find movement that I loved. And I did both of those things. Reduce toxins inside my home, like use more clean products, which I've done, and make faith a bigger part of my life, which I have done. And there are, of course, things I did not get to. I said that I wanted to more than double my income to save for a home in Massachusetts, like to buy a house when my lease was up in April 2026. I did not more than double my income. Not at all. I'm working more like the last part of this year, but when my health was like really, really, really bad this year, I was not working much at all. I was barely getting by, like time wise or like physically. I was fine financially, but definitely not like doubling my income. I'm also not planning to buy a home in Massachusetts. I'm hoping to buy something here. So that totally didn't happen. And I also had a goal to think less and to stop having ruminating thoughts and not overthink. And I did not do that at all. I actually was in like a 365-day thought spiral all this year. So it's interesting just to look back and yeah, see what things I said I was going to do and wanted to do and how many of them still came to fruition despite it literally being the worst year of my life.
Yeah, I was gonna say when you say it's the worst year ever, like obviously you've been dealing with so much this year, but when I look at your year from an outsider, like you moved to Florida, it seems like you really love Florida and you found like a really great community in Florida. So I think that this year, obviously, like seeing the flip side of it, like you can take it as these were the building blocks to give you like a really great 2026. And now you do have
For
like, I would say 80% of the answers that you need with your health and stuff going into
yeah,
2026. So it really is like setting the foundation for a good year next year.
it is. And I think like one of the things that, and this isn't even like, I don't think one of my reflections, but I think that, you know, there are people who will, I think this time of year, there's so much content we'll see online that is, you know, people recapping the best year of their lives. And I'm hyped. You've had like an amazing year, right? Like you've done amazing, amazing things. And I'm not sitting here being like, ugh, like she's going to talk about her amazing year while I had the worst year of my life, right? But when we're on social media and you're seeing, you know, there's people who are in my shoes who've had the worst year of their life. And we're on social media seeing all these people reflecting on all their beautiful, positive things. And it can be difficult. And so I don't think like if you had a year like me that was horrible in so many ways, that's okay. Like I have said this whole year, I've cried more days this year than I haven't. And that's like a scary reality, but that's the reality of it. There's the physical toll of it, there's the emotional toll of the health issues, the mental toll. And it's like there, but when I look at the whole year in totality, and I can still say it was the worst year of my life, and there were so many good things, like you said, moving to Florida, meeting my community here, growing in my faith. I don't know how I would have gotten through this year if I did not have my community and my faith. I truly have no idea. And just, I don't know. I've learned a lot about myself amidst all of that. And I think that's sometimes where we learn a lot is when we're in like the valleys of life. I don't know. I wanted to be like honest and open about that on the podcast, especially because I know that there has to be people who are listening to this that have also had a really tough year. It's not always going to be sunshine and rainbows. And I think there's meaning we can still extract from a year like that though, too.
I totally agree. And I also think whether it is on like a positive end or a negative end, if you have like one big thing that happened this year, again, whether it be positively or negatively, it's easy to look back on your year and let that kind of take over. But I do think when you're doing your own kind of like 2025 reflection, because I think if you're listening to this episode, I definitely encourage you to look back on your year as well. Like start with the goals that you set in January of 2025 and look at your year and what actually happened. Don't just let the one overarching thing take over and really try to look back at like, okay, what did March look like? What did April look like? How was I feeling? What happened? Were there any kind of like lessons or anything from the experiences that I have that I can extract from that? Because I think that that is so important. Because yeah, on my end, like if I look at 2025, I moved back to Pittsburgh and I bought a house, right? And it's easy to kind of like, okay, well, that was my year, right? But I do think that there were like so much that goes into it. And I'm happy that you pulled out our 2025 goals from that episode in January of 2025 to kind of remind me of what I wanted this year to look like and then what actually happened. And one interesting one that I thought that I wanted to mention here. It's on more of like the career and the professional goal side. Because I think in January of 2025 was a lot more, I don't even want to say a lot more ambitious, but I had a lot different of like career and professional goals. I think I was like very ready to be like boss girl in January of 2025 and like really wanted to do a lot more than I'm doing currently. And I think as the year went on, kind of don't have those same ambitions anymore.
Yeah.
Like I really am in the exact same place that I was in January of 2025 when it comes to career, business, content, really the podcast as well. Like I actually haven't made any progress this year. This year wasn't any better than 20. Actually, this year was a little bit worse if I'm looking at like business revenue. It was a little bit worse than 2024. Nothing crazy, but like a little bit worse. But I'm like so content with that. And I don't necessarily know if going into 2026, I want to set any more goals. I don't think I want to add any more onto my plate going into 2026, frankly. And another goal that I set related to career and professional goals, I said I wanted to invest more into my business, specifically around like attending retreats, going to conferences, like getting into the same room as people who were as ambitious as I was going into 2025. And I did it once. Okay. in March of 2025, I invested in a business retreat. I spent like $5,000. My other friend who is like in a similar boat with me on social media and like her business, we went together. It was in Costa Rica. I feel like I've talked about this on the podcast before, but our house got robbed in Costa Rica. And we were like running through the woods in Costa Rica in the middle of the night. And it was literally the worst, like actually so bad. So after that, I didn't do
Yeah.
anything else related to that
Valid.
goal. I was like,
Valid.
absolutely not.
I don't know if you've shared that on the
Absolutely
podcast. I know you mentioned that you went on the retreat, but I don't know if you've ever shared that. But I remember when you told me about what happened on, I was like, oh, my goodness. And
Yeah.
Erin is so, guys, Erin is so like, I don't even know, like level-headed is such a, I don't know if it's the right word, but like when she's telling me this, she's like, yeah. So then like the house got robbed and I was like running through the woods, like barefoot. And I'm like, Erin, why do you not seem like 10 times more alarmed, frantic? Like I would be so like traumatized I wouldn't leave my home. Like, and Erin was like, yeah, that was crazy. Like, and I'm like, you're so good at processing. Like, what? Maybe it's disassociation. I don't know. It was so funny.
Actually kind of am now that you mention it. I actually kind of am because it was wild. It was truly wild. A girl like literally got held at gunpoint. It was like actually so, I mean, everyone's fine. Like nobody got hurt. Thank God. Like it was fine at the end of the day, but it was very, very traumatizing.
Yeah. So like, yeah, I think I probably wouldn't go on another retreat immediately after.
No,
like
after
anything.
that, I was like, I'm only ever
let me go
traveling
home.
with Alex. Like,
yeah, like I want to
Yeah.
be home. No, that's
so that was
valid.
my big goal in 2025.
Yeah. I honestly, what you were saying about, you know, going into the year feeling so ambitious and then kind of things just going another way. I think that's been, and this isn't even one of the reflections that I wrote down, but I think that's been something that I've reflected on a lot this year because when life changes so drastically, for me, I had 3 times this year with the cancer scares where it was like my life kind of flashed before my eyes. And when you have a moment like that or where life kind of brings you all the way down or humbles you or whatever, or even just in your case where life just changed, like there were different priorities, different things, you know, happened, you moved, you bought a house, whatever. When there's these kind of life-changing things that happen, I think it really, really forces you to think about what you want out of life. And I know on the podcast, I always talk about the feelings that you want out of life, not just the things, right? And so financially, for example, I've always been like, I want to be a millionaire or whatever. And I mean like, you know, salary millionaire, not just like net worth millionaire. And then like this year, I was like, so many times out this year and still to this day, I'm like, I just want to be able to take a deep breath in because I haven't been able to do that in 5 years. Or I just want to be able to go for a walk because I couldn't even go for walks without the nerve pain in my legs being so bad. And when you have, like, it just really puts things in perspective. And it's not to say that I don't want to build wealth, but I was like, wow, what is actually getting me through these moments is the fact that I have like freedom and flexibility. If I'm having a really bad pain day, I can go sit in my bed and work more the next day because I work for myself and I have that choice. And just being able to still have clients that were able to keep me paying my bills and running my business when there was a span this year where I was working. It was like bad. It was like hardly anything because I was in so much pain all the time. And it just puts things in perspective. And I really helped me see what do I actually desire out of life. And I realized I don't desire having a mansion of a house and a, you know, Range Rover and, you know, wearing all these designer clothes. Like I don't desire that really at all. I just want freedom and choice and the ability to, yeah, like not work as much if I want to, if my health is an issue, or even just being able to pay for all of the medical things that I paid for this year. What a blessing. And like, I want a job and a future that allows me to continue doing that because now, I mean, we're still not out of the weeds with all of it, but even the supplement routine I have to start now is probably going to cost me like $300 a month. Like just to be able to like have my body be at a normal kind of point. And that takes money to be able to do that, right? And I don't know, it really put things in perspective. And like you said, you went into the year with, I want to, you know, do all these things and I have all these ambitions. And then you're like, is that like, do I actually want that? Or like, do I kind of want to just slow down for a minute and like, yeah, live a bit of a slower life and not always be like hustling?
I definitely think 2025 put into perspective for me which of my goals were a little bit driven by ego and which of them are because I want the intended result of what that looks like for my life, if that makes sense, kind of what you were saying. Because I think a lot of the goals that I set at the beginning of the year and even going back into 2024 as well, they were driven by a lot of like, okay, I want to make $1 million in a year, which like would that be very cool to at some point in my life say that I've made $1 million in a year in my business? Sure. But that's all. It would be cool to
Mm-hmm.
say, like, it's very
Right.
driven by ego. That's not something that you're like, I want that because it's going to give me X, Y, and Z in my life. It is driven by ego. And I think that that's kind of the case with like social media and followings and stuff as well, too. I don't have any goals right now or at all for like growing any more than I have. Like what's more followers going to do? That's all driven by ego if I set a goal for that at this point in my life. So I think it's just important to remember that like the goals that you set, you can realize that like, hey, no, I don't actually want that out of my life. Because I think like if I look back at my 2025, I was in Nashville for half of the year and then I moved back to Pittsburgh for the other half of the year. And when I was in Nashville, Alex and I were long distance and he was actually deployed for like 4 out of those 6 months in 2025 that I was in Nashville. So not only were we long distance, but he like fully wasn't even in the country.
Very
like,
long distance.
very
Yeah.
long distance. Our time difference was like 8 or 9 hours. So he would go to bed at 2 p.m. my time. So for those 4 months, like I was just fully focused on work and I was okay with that. And I was like, okay, that's fine. Like, this is just the phase of my life that I'm in. I'm hustling. I am on my computer for 10 hours a day. And I thought that that's like what I wanted. But then coming back here, I did realize that, like, no, the intended goal is actually to slow down more and to not be glued to my computer for 10 hours a day. And like, that's okay. If my income takes a dip, like, that's okay. And I have to be okay with not being like productive 20.
I've also realized too that like I've spent the last 4.5 years working really hard to get to the place that I am. And I've struggled with feeling like it's not guilt. I don't feel guilt about it, but feeling like I can take a step back because I mean, even the first year and a half of building my freelance business, I don't think I worked a 40-hour week in that time frame. It was always more. And I was always working weekends and working late at night and whatever because I knew in my head that if I commit to that strategic period of imbalance, as we always talk about on the podcast, if I hustle for that first bit, I know that I can reap the rewards down the line where I don't have to do that. And now I'm in that position where, this year was it, I ended the year, making, I think, a little bit more than what I did last year, but not like, again, I wanted to more than double my income. That did not happen. Right. But I also worked significantly less this year than I did last year because of my health issues. And so there was this weird situation where I was kind of like, dang, like, I don't know how to feel about that. I feel like I should be hustling. I should be hustling. And then I was like, hold on a second. And like you, the same individual, the same body that you're in right now, the same version of you or this person, your past you busted her tail to be able to put you in the position that you're in now. And I personally feel like there's like meaning in everything and there's a reason for everything. I feel like this all unfolded the way that it happened. And if I hadn't done what I did 4.5 years ago, I have no idea how I would have made it work now. And I'm so grateful that, God kind of orchestrated everything the way that he did for me to be in this position now where I was able, like I had the business at the point that it was at to be able to still make, not even go down from my income last year, still make what I made last year, if not more. I haven't done the full totals, but and work less and be able to take care of my health and do all these things. And so I don't know, it's a weird feeling, but it's such a great point that, you have to think about whether things are coming from a place of ego. Because I know for me, when I was like, oh, I want to, accomplish this and make that much and, have this thing and that thing and whatever. And I used to be, in years past, I used to be more not materialistic, but my goals were very, I want to have this car and I want to look this way and, be dripped out and all this design or whatever. I could not care less about that now, but it's all ego driven. And I think it's good to take time to reflect on, yeah, what goals did you set at the beginning of the year? And was any of that driven by ego? It's a
Yeah.
great point.
I totally get what you mean about the feeling of guilt because I will say, especially in the social media and the content creation space, building and getting to a point where you're making any money off of social media is so hard and it does
Mm-hmm.
take a very long time. But once you get to that point, nurturing what you've built doesn't actually take that much time. It is significantly harder to build than it is to nurture. And I totally get the feeling of guilt when you get to that nurture phase because you feel like you're not working hard enough for the benefits that you're reaping, but you forget about all of the time that you spent
Mhm.
making $0 building and getting to a place where you're making even your first dollar. So I totally relate to that. But should we get into some of our lessons learned
Yes.
from 2025? Because we each wrote down like 3 or 4 lessons that we want to talk about. And this was kind of, again, just us reflecting on the year and saying, if we look at 2025 as a whole, what were some of like the biggest takeaways or lessons that we can apply going into 2026? And I feel like we have kind of a range of them. So I'm excited to chat
Yeah.
about these. I can start with the first one because this is actually something that like I've been thinking about a lot in 2025, but then something happened to me over the weekend that like solidified that I wanted to talk about this. So the overarching lesson and takeaway from 2025 is that everyone is inherently pretty selfish and their actions are always about them and not about you. And I think that this is really important no matter whether you're thinking about it in terms of like your friendships, your relationships, or your coworkers, like anyone that you really interact with in your life, remembering that what they're doing is not a reflection on you and it's always a reflection on them. And what happened to me over the weekend, I posted a TikTok video about this because this was a little bit crazy, but basically, there's like a couple girls here in Pittsburgh that I wouldn't necessarily consider like close friends, but I've probably hung out with them like 10 to 15 times in my life. Like one of the girls is actually the girl that I was at the Pirates game with when I met Alex like a year and a half ago. So not a friend, right? And I've
Yeah.
only ever had like positive experiences with her. Like her and I aren't close enough to like have any drama, you know? But my friend was visiting me from Nashville over the weekend and we went to dinner and then my Nashville friend and I, we went home and the other girls that were at dinner with us, my friend Emma, and then these other 2 girls who again, close, but not like super, super close. Those 3 go out. And then they're out for a couple of hours. They all go back to this girl's apartment. And my friend Emma falls asleep on the couch, or at least like they thought she was sleeping on the couch. So she's like laying there with her eyes closed. And these 2 girls start talking like massive crap on us, like for like an hour. Okay. So much. Like the example that I used in the TikTok video that I posted was the girl was saying how my budget templates are so stupid and yeah, just like all this mean stuff. She was saying how I sound so dumb talking about how Alex and I are going to get engaged because apparently he's like weird or something, like just saying such like cruel things. They were saying a ton of things about Emma too, as Emma is laying there, like not only talking about me, but also talking about Emma as she's literally laying there on the couch 10 feet away, which is absolutely insane. But going back to kind of this overarching lesson is just that it's easy to look at that and internalize all of those things that were said about you and be like, oh my gosh, like, are my budget templates stupid? Is my boyfriend weird? Like, I don't even know. Like, obviously not.
Alex is so weird. Come on. Just kidding.
He's probably upstairs listening to this, like, what? But just remembering that, like, to me, what I hear is that she's insecure about her career and her relationships. And you
Mhm.
have to think about it like that because if not,
Mhm.
it's so easy to let other people's opinions of you get internalized and you start to believe them about yourself.
Mhm. I always think about the two analogies that are like your cup overflows. And so like it's like what comes out of you is a reflection of what's inside of you. Like if you're depleted, there's no overflow, right? If you're full of jealousy and hatred and whatever, and you're so full of that, it's going to overflow. That's going to be what your overflow is from your cup is jealousy. But also, I heard this analogy the other week about if everyone is a sponge and like if you go and you soak a sponge in water and then you squeeze the water is going to come out of the sponge. And like the sponge is under pressure because you're squeezing it and the water's coming out. And it was like to think about people like sponges. And when you're under pressure and you're being squeezed, what comes out? And with this girl, she didn't even have to be squeezed. She just freely let it out. So it's like, dang, like, what would you say about me if if you
Yeah.
were, if there was like some extra drama, like it's just, but I think it is, people really are a mirror of what's going on internally. And they find they find the things that are points of jealousy in other people and comment on them to make themselves feel better. That's really what it is.
Yeah, and I will say I think this was a good lesson in like I have always taken the mindset that people can be in your life for a certain purpose and they don't need to be everything to you. And to a certain extent, I still believe that to be true,
Yeah.
right? Like learning to take people as they are. They don't need to be an amazing friend in every single pillar of your life to still be a good friend to you. But I think this was a good reminder that like sometimes people just flat out aren't good people and like
Yeah.
you should take them at face value and not let
Yeah.
those people into your life because like to me that girl was just like a big friend group girl. Like we would go out together sometimes in a big friend group and like I was like I'm not super close with her. It doesn't really matter. But even letting somebody into your life to that extent still can have negative repercussions.
Because it's just like what you're thinking, all these things about how
I
long have you
know.
been thinking these and you've been
Yeah,
stewing in
I
them and then
sent
you
her
say
my
them
budget
out
template
loud?
a year and a half ago. A year and a half ago, and mind you, I am so like, I get so awkward when anyone in my real life brings up what I do on social media, budgetings, like, I never
Mhm.
talk about it, never. It didn't come up for 1 second at dinner. She got my budget template over a year and a half ago because we were out at a bar and, again, like, in a big, like, girlfriend group, and someone brought it up, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, I really need to start tracking my spending, like, I'm so bad at it." And I was like, "Well, don't spend $9 on it, I'll send it to you for free." I send it to everybody in my personal life. All my
Yeah.
friends have my budget template because I've sent it to them for free. And
Same.
we haven't talked about it since. We literally have not talked about it since. And then she's sitting there at 2 o'clock in the morning last weekend, being like, her budget templates are so dumb, like blah, blah, blah.
It's one thing to be jealous of somebody, think that we all like people feel jealous. You see someone with something that you want and you're like, "Ugh," you're like that, like I feel a little bit jealous or whatever, but then you have to kind of self-correct and be like, okay, no, I'm on my own mission, da 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 da, whatever. To then like go and say, and I mean, I'm sorry, saying it is crazy, but saying it also with her whole chest in front of your best friend,
Yes.
like
Emma literally
what is
said
going
she
on?
was like, they're so dumb for thinking that I was sleeping. She was like, I couldn't have had my eyes closed for more than 3 minutes before they started talking crap on us.
Which is it's just
Which
like,
is
I don't
crazy.
even like, not that you should do it at all, but like at least do it in like the privacy of your own home, where like no one's there. I don't know. Like,
It's
yeah.
wild.
Oh
It
my
is wild.
goodness. Well, yeah, that is wild. I watched that TikTok video that you posted and my jaw was just agape the entire time. I was like, what the heck? Okay. My first reflection is, I feel like again, I've had the worst year of my life. So this is a pretty simple one. But when I was thinking about what my reflections were for 2025, I was like, I don't even know what to say. And then I thought more and I have some other reflections too. But I think my overarching lesson for this year was just like, not every year is going to be a win. Not every opportunity is going to be, yeah, a win. Not every day is going to be a win. Not every moment is going to be just like moving forward. And I think that's been hard because for me to wrap my head around, because I've been so relentless about forward progress for as long as I can remember. Like middle school, high school, college, I've always been like, how can I better myself? How can I grow in this area? How can I improve in school, learn more, do more, be a better friend, be a better partner, like whatever. And I feel like last year when I had some health issues, there was like a period of time where I kind of had to slow down, but I was dealing with like chronic exhaustion and I couldn't even like lift my arms like up to like put them on my desk and stuff. So I was like working on my couch with my because my hands could just like rest down on my computer. But even then I would start to like fall asleep after about like 2 or 3 hours of working. So there was a period of time where I just couldn't really do that. But I still felt like I had enough time to be able to make some sort of progress, which is like kind of crazy to say. But this year really took me like all the way out. And it was hard for me to wrap my head around. This is like the first time in my life, I think, where I'm not actually progressing forward in terms of like my career. And when it came to bettering myself and growing, I was like, you know what? I don't really want, I'm not really focused on like, how can I be better in one area? I'm in therapy being like, I have literally cried multiple times every time this week. Let's regroup why, or like, yeah, I just got, sitting in this appointment being like, yeah, I'm waiting. I have a week until I can find out if the sample is like cancerous or whatever. Like these were not, this was not a year of like, how can I move forward? like in a lot of the ways that I typically did. And that was really hard for me to wrap my head around. And I feel like a lot of women listening to this who are maybe like me and the chronic overachievers and you're always trying to do more and be more and do this and that and whatever might relate to this, that some years are just not that. And I had to think about how I'm making progress in other ways. And I also think about the spiral staircase analogy, where if you're looking top down on a spiral staircase, it just looks like a circle and you feel like you're going in a circle. But what is actually happening is you kind of are going in a circle and you might not be going up as like quickly as you would on regular stairs, but you are still going vertical, even though you feel like you're going around and around. And so I think this year, my progress looked different, but it was a good year to say, okay, I mean, I hope I never have a year like this again. Let me say, like, we're not reliving this, but it was good to learn that the progress is going to look different. And there will be seasons that you physically won't be able to progress in the way that you want. And that's okay because you'll learn other things.
I think also if anyone's listening to this and they can't, I hope no one else listening to this, I hope no one else listening can relate to like the chronic health stuff,
Yeah.
because that's obviously
I don't
terrible.
want it to happen to anyone.
Yeah, nobody else here. But if you can't relate to that, I think what you said too about even not so much like not every year is going to be a win, but not every day is going to be a win. And if you zoom out and look at it from that capacity too, I think learning how to truly rest on a day when you know it's not going to be a win sets you up for a better tomorrow. And that's something that I struggle with too. And I feel like you could probably relate to this as well. Like when your body needs rest, not being like slightly anxious while you're trying to rest,
Yeah.
because that's something that like I would struggle with. Maybe I'd be in my luteal phase or not feeling well or just tired or something, just like not having a good day. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to take it easy today and try to rest. But then you're anxious about the fact that you're not being productive. So you're not actually resting. And then you wake up the next day feeling even worse. So I think that's something to kind of accept as well, is if you're not having a good day, just let it not be a good day and kind of surrender to it. And that's fine. And tomorrow can be even better. You can set yourself up for a better tomorrow. Okay, my second one on this list is that you have to do something long enough for it to work out and long enough for it to actually provide a financial return. Was something that I was thinking about over the weekend, because my friend and I, we went to go take a Pilates class at a studio that my best friend from college is now a Pilates instructor at. And she's been into Pilates for years. Her dream was to become a Pilates instructor, and her long-term dream is open her own Pilates studio. And if you look at that and say, okay, being a Pilates instructor today doesn't necessarily, obviously you get paid for being a Pilates instructor, but that's not, if your goal is to become wealthy, like that's not today going to give you the means to become wealthy. But being a Pilates instructor, owning your own studio, now you're a business owner, now you can scale, now you can really become wealthy, right? However, the amount of time that it's going to take you to do Pilates for years to even be good enough to be a Pilates instructor, and then be a Pilates instructor and be a really good Pilates instructor. Megan, I was like blown away. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you've only been teaching Pilates for a month. Like you're so good at it. You're such a natural. But like it takes a really long time to be a Pilates instructor that is good enough to own their own studio. And then obviously that's a whole years and years and years of opening your own studio and all of that. So it just kind of got me thinking about how, like, no matter what your goal is in life, it's going to take you a long time to get there before you can really reap the financial benefits of it. And I feel like as adults, we've kind of lost that. Like in school, you're willing to take a couple of years where you're learning a subject and you're not making any money on the subject because you're still trying to get your degree. But then I think as adults, we realize that we have an ambition that it's going to take us a couple of years to really see through and really come to fruition. And we're not willing to take that. We're not really willing to like take on that risk or the long-term kind of hustle to get where you want to be.
I feel like when you're in college and you have, if your bills are all on student loans, or if you had scholarship that covers all your bills, or if you're working, a part-time, minimum wage job, but it's enough to cover your bills, there's like a little bit less pressure where it's like, okay, yeah, I can see the vision of I'm investing this time into this degree and I'll graduate. But you're right. It's you spend 4 years typically studying something because you know there's likely to be a result at the end. That's what the thing is. You think you're gonna get a job at the end. Some people get all the way to the end of those 4 years and then they can't find a job in their industry or whatever. And when we're adults, I think sometimes the pressure is on in a way where you do have responsibilities, financial responsibilities. And so I think people crave whatever they're working on. If it's something that you are building and trying to monetize, they crave the end result so badly that they lose patience throughout the process. Or they're like, gosh, like, because if you're working a full-time job, let's say, and you're building a side hustle on the side, you are simply going to be working more. And of course, it gets really exhausting when you're working 60, 70 hours a week to do both things. But I think if you can commit to that vision, it's so, I mean, as someone who did, it's so worth it. And I think that is just the reality of a lot of the good things that you want. You know, if you have a full-time job and you're trying to become a Pilates instructor on the side, like, and turn that into your full time. It's probably the wise move to, do the teacher training on the weekends and after work and, start teaching classes on the side of your full time job and get stable there and build that up before you just quit your job and go straight into something else. Or if you want to be a content creator, I see people give up so fast. They're like, I've been posting videos for 2 months and I have 100 followers. Correct. Correct.
Correct. Yep.
So like look at your content. Like what's not working? Are people, when are they dipping out and leaving? Like be very thoughtful about it and commit to the long term. Like, yeah, it takes time.
Yeah. No, we say all the time we've been podcasting since November of 2023, and we've definitely grown a lot, but we're still not making money off of this podcast. Like, we're totally playing the long game. But I also think that that's why it's important that you have to love what you're doing and you have to find ways to enjoy the process. Like, if you're trying to become a content creator, but you don't find it scratches your like creative itch to be filming and editing and posting videos. Like, for me, I really love like editing videos and the creativity behind it. That's like the way that I am creative. I'm not creative in literally any other aspect of my life. But if you hate it, if you're not enjoying it at all and you're like, I'm just posting once a day because in a year I'm going to be making money from it, you are going to burn out before you start making money from it. It takes a really long time. So you really have to find something that you love and dedicate time and energy into it so that you love the process, not just the financial return.
Yeah, I know. For the podcast too, it's like at this point, the podcast is like almost a hobby for us. And yes, we film during the day because lighting is better than if we tried to film at night when we're both like done our other work and stuff and we have flexibility in our schedule. But if we were both in 9 to 5s or working and then we filmed this after work, that's what it would be. It would be a hobby and it would be us filming after work because it's not paid. It's not our job. Yeah, of course we want to monetize it, but we also recognize it as something that we have to commit to on the long term. So yeah, we spend a couple hours every week filming it and editing these and doing all these things. And I think that, yeah, that's just par for the course when it comes to any sort of big goal that you have. Okay, I have 4. I guess this one and then 2 more after, but my second reflection is just that life gets a lot better when you learn to surrender it, which I know you were kind of just talking about too. And I'm not saying to just like let the wind take you wherever and not try. I'm not a let the wind take me kind of gal. I can go with the flow as long as I know the direction of the flow, the speed of the flow, how I need to dress for the flow. Like I need some details. I'm not I like to float through life kind of person. I wish I had a little bit more of that in me, but I think that amidst the chaos this year, things were best and I felt more peace when I just fully surrendered to whatever would happen. And this is going to sound really intense and like maybe, I don't know, scary, but I guess it is kind of scary, but it gave me so much perspective. When I had the first cancer scare this year, I had a week in between when they were like, we found a mass with blood flow and they were like, really like, we really need to do more testing. Like they were really, really nervous and concerned about it. And I had a week between that and when I was going back for further imaging for them to like, just, look at it again, basically. And they wouldn't allow me to speak to a doctor in between the first appointment and the second one because I was a new patient. And apparently they don't let new patients talk to the doctor in between. So I was just sitting there in my own thoughts after they just told me there's this mass and it has signs of blood flow and we think it could be malignant and we need to get these images and whatever. And I lost my mind. Like I was like sick to my stomach the whole week. I was so anxious. I was like struggling to eat. That was the week I brought my foster dog in, which was like the worst idea ever because she was like a puppy and a menace. And like, I'm already anxious. And then she's like, it was just a lot. But I lost my mind. And then I went back and they were like, oh, the mass is gone. What in God's green earth? Which this is just like side note, guys. I ended up going to this was a mass they found outside my ovary and they thought it could be maybe like ovarian cancer, an ovarian mass of some sort, whatever. And I ended up going to a different OBGYN after. And I was talking to him and I was like, hey, like they told me that I had this like mass outside my ovary. I had blood flow, all this stuff. And he looks at me and he goes, you know what I think it is, Grace? And I was like, what? And he goes, he didn't say, he used a different word. Oh, he said, he was like poop, but he used like a different word for poop. And I forget what it was. Like he said something like crap or like, and I was like, I'm sorry. Like, I was like, what? And he was like, I think that the ultrasonographers there were just like really not well versed. And he was like, I think they got a picture of your colon. And he was like, I think there was poop in your colon. And so the poop showed up as like a little circle or whatever. And the outside of my colon showed like blood flow or something. And I was like, are you actually serious? Like, we went through all that. They told me they found this ovarian mass and it's blood flow and like we're really concerned and da 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 da. And it was likely just poop. So it was just, anyways, I ended up like losing my mind that first week because I'm sitting there waiting for results and I don't know what's going on. And then when I had the second cancer scare, we're still monitoring the masses to make sure they don't turn into cancerous masses, but I am high risk for breast cancer. There's like a 20 something percent chance that I will develop breast cancer in my lifetime. And they found a mass on the side of my body and masses in one of my breasts. And so we were continuing to have to monitor again to make sure they don't, turn into cancer. But that I remember like after that first appointment, when I got the first images, they didn't expect them to have blood flow. They were like, it's probably just a lump of fat. And then they did have blood flow. And obviously being so high risk for it, I was like, okay, here we go again now, but now this is a bit more real. And I remember sitting there after that first appointment when I was waiting to go back for further imaging on the breast masses. And I remember just saying, I was like, God, if this is part of what you have for me, like I'll find purpose in it. Like if I cannot control the outcome in this moment. I cannot cry over spilled milk here. I mean, I can cry and I did very much cry, but I mean, I can't sit here and just dwell and dwell and dwell on what is happening because no amount of that is going to miraculously get this mass out of my breast. If it is cancer, if it's not cancer, if whatever it may be, all I can do in that moment is say, okay, how can I use my life experience to make myself better, to make other people better, to make the world better, to do something positive with it. And that I've tried to take that mindset into the rest of the year. Like you said earlier, when you're having even on the small things, when you're having a day where you're like, I'm exhausted and I just need a break, like it's okay to surrender to that. I don't think of surrender as giving up and just, again, letting life make decisions for you. I think of it as like you just, I don't know, like kind of taking a little bit of a back seat and letting things unfold and like not dwelling on it. So it's like, yeah, like maybe I'm not feeling great today. I'm just going to surrender to that and I'm just going to sit on my couch for an hour and take a break and I'll try again tomorrow or I'll try again in a couple hours. Like you don't have to try to push through everything. But I do think that when you're going through stuff like that and you do surrender to it, surrender with the mindset of like, how can I find purpose in it? And that's been like a big thing for me. And now my mindset the last few months has been, okay, now I know I have endometriosis. It's a chronic condition. I'm figuring out what my plan looks like for ongoing care and all of this and thinking about all the future things. But how can I now use this to elevate myself or elevate people around me or make an impact? Can I volunteer with, endometriosis trials or whatever it may be? And I think that was like a huge lesson from this year is to just kind of be the passenger seat sometimes in life.
I think too, learning, like no matter what the situation is, learning to not be anxious about things preemptively is so important. And it's so hard. I am so bad at it. That happened to me earlier this year too. I like found a lump on the side of my boob, which I'm still kind of dealing with, but because I had to go see a specialist about it, my doctor said it was basically just like flare ups at certain times of the month for like excess estrogen, or I don't know, I'm not a doctor, but she basically said it was fine. But I was definitely anxious about it until I found out it was fine. But your brain, what do they say? Like your brain does that to keep you safe. You basically,
it does, yeah.
Your brain runs through scenarios to prepare you for what could happen so that you're prepared if that scenario does come to fruition. But literally all that does is it makes you anxious for something that probably won't even come to fruition. So like talking yourself out of that and not letting your brain go to whether it be a conversation that you might have to have with your boss at work or a presentation that you might have to give, like all of these situations that might not even happen, we sit there and we dwell over so that our brain can be prepared if it does come up. So it's really important to not let yourself like spiral on things that might not even be a problem, but it's hard to do.
Yeah, they call it rehearsing. Like, I don't know if you've ever, and I'm going to expose myself if no one listening has ever done the same thing, but sometimes if I was ever having like a conflict with someone or if I was anticipating a conflict, there's been times I've literally been in the shower and I'm like talking to myself where I'm just like, well, I just feel like that, like I'm running through what I would say
100%.
if this person ends up being upset with me, or I'm running through like on a walk and in my head, I'm running through what I would say if this client decides to like, part ways. And it's like, okay, but your brain does it because again, you're trying to keep yourself safe because your brain views it as, yeah, if I've already rehearsed this, then you can't catch me off guard. But then half the time you end up rehearsing things that don't even happen.
That don't
So I
happen.
I try to when I catch myself doing that, I try to rehearse the best case scenario too, of just being like, okay, here I am rehearsing, with all my health stuff that I pre-surgery, I was like, well, maybe what if I go in there and they find nothing and I wake up and then I have all these complications afterwards and then everything gets worse and da da da. And I was like, okay, what if we go in, surgery is seamless, we wake up, they find it, it's minimal, they take it out, and I live a much better life afterwards. Like, and where I ended up is kind of somewhere in between. And like, that's okay. But yeah, trying to rehearse not just the
Yeah.
negative, the positive is really
Yes.
helpful.
I something that helps me before we move on is I just keep telling myself like all I'm doing right now is letting myself have to deal with this twice,
Mm,
because if you are going to sit there and like be anxious for something that could potentially happen in the future, you're forcing yourself to deal with it twice and like have a negative experience twice. So it kind of like does yourself a disservice, but just deal with it in the moment. If it
yeah.
happens, you're going to be prepared. You're going to know how to handle the conversation. You're going to know how to talk to your boss about whatever it is that you've been procrastinating. Like it,
Hmm.
don't let yourself have to deal with it twice.
Yeah,
And that
I love
usually
that.
helps me. Okay, my last one. This might sound like very, very intuitive if you know us, but this is something that I've been thinking about a lot this year specifically because this is the first year that, I mean, I'm 26 now. I think this is the first year that I like actually am truly an adult, if I'm being totally honest. And this is the first year that like these things are really starting to come to fruition, but it's to save money and like save money in the context of there are so many things that are about to come up in your adult life. And unless your parents are willing to front a lot of the bigger expenses, like you need money for so many things. I was thinking about this specifically about a month ago. We went to a baptism for a kid in our family. So it's like a baptism at church. And then afterwards, there was a big lunch for both sides of the family. So there were probably like 60 or 70 people. And I'm looking around and I'm like, this is probably a $5,000 lunch. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that's not cheap to host a lunch for your baptism for your kid. And if you have multiple kids, and it just kind of got me thinking, like, how many things come up as an adult that you need money for, and like, where does that money come from? I was thinking about this as well because, like, I'm 26 now. I want to get married. I don't want to have a big wedding, but I want to have a wedding to some extent. That takes money.
Yeah.
Where's
Yeah.
that gonna come from? And not saying that my parents aren't gonna, like, help at all, but I kind of don't wanna take money from my parents for that,
Hmm.
like, my parents are still trying to figure out how they're gonna retire. I don't wanna take money from them for my wedding, and so that takes money. When you're in your mid-20s specifically, you're kind of in this crossroads where you don't know when some of those bigger life things are going to hit you. So you don't prepare for them because you just kind of think they're going to happen in the future. But then all of a sudden, when it happens really quick. And you're like, crap, I wish I would have started saving earlier. So I don't know. I think that was a big lesson this year.
Mm. I just had a conversation I did this like sort of podcast style interview with the brand, and they were asking me about my perspective on saving because they were like, you drive a car right now that you have no intention of replacing anytime soon, but you've been saving for a new car for 2 years. Like, how'd you get yourself in that mindset? I was like, out of fear. I'm like, I am so afraid of what would happen if my car died tomorrow and I had $0 saved for a car. Like, I would not, because I want to pay for my next car in cash. I don't want to have a car payment. So it's like you have to start saving way before you even think that you're going to need the money. And even I'm like, oh my gosh, again, all my health stuff, so glad it worked out the way that it did. And I had the money saved to be able to do it because I had saved. Like I had money saved. But yeah, I think saving way before you think you need it. The worst case scenario is you end up having more than you need. oh, whoop-de-doo, you save
Yeah.
$30,000 for a wedding and then you decide to only spend 20,000 and now you have an extra 10 grand that you can do whatever you want with. Like, what a crisis. But the alternative is you don't save enough and then you get there and you're like, crap. Now I have to go into debt for this or make a choice that I don't want to make. Like I have to buy the thing that is what I can afford and not what I actually want. And now I'm putting a bunch of money into something that I really don't want, which sucks, or then you're kind of stuck because you don't have the money for it. So yeah,
Yeah.
saving way, way sooner than you think.
100%.
Okay. I'm going to share my last one or my number three. I had four, but I won't share number four. I'll just share number three because I feel like we're yapping for a long time. And I think this is a good conversation because I think we talked about this in a recent episode as well. But one of my 2025 reflections was that jealousy really gets you nowhere. I don't think I've shared this on the podcast before, but I've struggled a lot with jealousy, especially after college. I think just I've always been the person who continually moves the bar for myself. Like I accomplish a goal and I'm like, well, why aren't you there? And it's funny because it's happened at every single stage. I remember when I was doing social media, I was doing TikTok and I wanted to hit 10,000 followers and I was like, why aren't you at 10,000? Then I hit 10,000 and I was like, well, you should be at 30, like faster. And then I got to 30 and then it was like, well, why aren't you at this mark and this mark, whatever. And I've been doing this for 3 years now. And I quote unquote only have 120,000 on my TikTok. And in the content creator space, that's considered pretty small still. And for doing it for 3 years, that's also considered like pretty small, I guess. Like there are people who go from 0 to 500,000, in the span of a year. Those metrics, again, it's like, what's the point? Like, is it an ego thing? I know that when you build a larger community online, you can reach more people, you can impact more people, and there are more opportunities. And then again, I think change happens when good women are well resourced. So if I can become well resourced, I can do a lot of things with that money that can help myself, help other people, help my family, whatever. So there is benefit to growing, but I always move the bar no matter where I'm at. And still to this day, I'm like, okay, now what's the next thing? And so I would struggle a lot with jealousy, and my faith has helped a lot with that and just realizing like I'm on my own mission, but I struggled with that. And I think a lot of people do. I think it comes from, for me, not being like fully happy with where I'm at or wanting more. Like I do want more out of life. And so sometimes when I would see people with more, I would get really jealous. But what I've realized this year is that jealousy it doesn't get you literally anywhere. And it also is kind of like you said, almost like having to force you to feel something twice, in the sense that, again, the last 2 years of my life really slowing me down and putting me in a position where I didn't really get to accomplish everything that I wanted to this year. I could sit here and be jealous of, oh my gosh, I put $20,000 into my health, into like surgeries and medical procedures and all this crazy stuff and supplements and scans and whatever. And someone my age could have taken that 20 grand and gone on like a really cool vacation. And I'm jealous that that I don't get to have that life experience right now, that's not where God has me. But all that does is it takes me away from the mission that I'm on. And going back to what I said before about finding purpose in where you're at, I think that we all like we can find purpose in everything. And I think there's a reason that my life is unfolding the way that it is. There's a reason that I'm experiencing this at this age in particular and not 5 years down the line. There's a reason that, yeah, that I moved to Florida and then happened to find this amazing surgeon and, the first doctor that validated me. Like there's a reason for all of these things. So me being jealous about somebody else's life is literally only taking me away from finding purpose in the mission that I think God's given me in this moment. And even if you're not Christian, if you don't believe in a higher power or whatever, focusing on what everybody else is doing is just taking away your own focus from your mission. And when you're not focused on the mission that you're on, it's going to be harder to make progress on it anyways. So if I'm always looking at what everyone else is doing with their business and being jealous about it, I just basically am wasting time not focusing on my own. And then when I sit back and I'm like, what did I do the last 3 hours? I didn't take any sort of action on my own business. I paid attention to everybody else's. And yeah, I don't know. I think that that's been a huge reflection for me. And yeah, just, I don't know, staying focused on my own thing. And genuinely, I do find myself, I get jealous here and there. But when I do, it's very rare now, but when I do feel jealous, I'll just ask myself, like, what does this reveal to me? If I see somebody who is, for example, I want to buy a house, but there are certain things that have kind of put me off course of where I would want to be, like with my health and all the money that went towards my health was supposed to go into my home savings. So kind of threw me off there a little bit. And I would get jealous. Oh, like someone else is buying a home or whatever. And then I would say, what does that reveal to me? All it reveals to me is that I really want that thing. I want a house. That's what it reveals to me. And okay, what's in my control? Okay, I can do XYZ thing to get me there. Or if I see someone who is in, a great relationship, I have several friends in my real life that have literally met people I think are going to be their husbands recently, like multiple of them. And I could sit there and be jealous about it and be like, oh, they just met their person. I haven't met my person. Or I can say, what does that reveal to me? It reveals to me that I really want to meet my person. And I will say, I'm not jealous of, any of my friends in that way. It's just an example. I'm so happy for them. But I'm like, that's all it reveals to me is that it really matters to me. It's something I really care about. What's in my control? What can I do to get closer to that goal? It all goes back to focusing on my own mission and what I'm doing for myself. So that's been a huge
Yeah.
mental unlock for me.
I've definitely been struggling with that over the last couple of years too. I think more so in like the career space, and it is so unproductive because everyone's on their own path. And if you try to focus on a million paths, you're literally going to stay put. You're not going to make progress on anything because at the end of the day, like let's say you want to start a side hustle, right? And you are following a bunch of people that are all doing their own side hustles. Okay, well, if you start taking one step toward route A, but then you see someone doing route B, and then you try to take a step forward toward route B, okay, well, now you haven't made progress toward A or B, and you're not going to make progress toward A or B. So I've definitely struggled with that too, like staying in my own lane and just being like, I don't have to do everything. It is ego driven,
Hmm.
100%. Just remembering that, yeah, I don't have to do everything and I could just stay in my own lane and be totally content and happy. And I don't need to be anywhere that I'm not right now because at the end of the day, like if I had a million followers on social media. Like, one, I don't want to be a celebrity. I
Mm-mm.
know that would be so terrible to me. It would be so terrible to me. So just kind of remembering that, yeah, like what's the purpose behind all of your goals and you don't have to do everything.
Yeah. And I also think too, I have learned. So again, I feel like if people listen to this podcast, if you follow me on social media, you know that I am Christian and that is my compass, I guess. But I also recognize that other people have different beliefs. So, there's a pastor that I was listening to a sermon that he was preaching last year. And even if you're not religious, I think that this is relevant. But he said like God gives you intuition, but he also gives you free will. Because someone had asked the pastor basically like, do you think that you could like basically meet your is there anything you can do to ruin it if you meet your person? And he was like, well, God gives you intuition, but also gives you free will. So he's like, God can put the person in your life. You can feel really good about it, but you still have the free will to run away or to mess it up or to, whatever, to try to run from it or self sabotage, whatever. So he's like, the point is to listen into your intuition. And even outside the religious context that he shared that in, I think of my intuition as my compass. And if I still have the free will though to follow my ego or to follow jealousy or to, yearn for things that are not what my intuition is actually telling me because I think that thing is going to make me look better or feel better or that it's going to give me something that's going to make other people perceive me to be better or more successful or whatever. But I think that again, if I'm thinking about my intuition as the compass and listening to what actually feels right in my body and what feels good to me and myself, that's all coming from within. And I think that the times I've felt the most aligned in my life is when I'm listening to my intuition, 90% of the time. And the external influence is coming from, talking to someone who is really wise and is maybe like big sister kind of energy or me reading a book about a topic or something like that, but it's coming from what feels right within my body. And I think that being online, it's hard because we see other people's lives more than ever before, and I do think that sometimes it gets unhealthy and pulls us away from our own intuition and listening to what do I like to do and what feels right to me. And that's something I want to continue doing as now I've kind of gotten over that jealousy hump of being like, okay, I'm not jealous about other people's stuff, but now I want to tune back into what do I want and what action steps to get there feel the most aligned. And that comes from, for me, it was like spending time alone and meditating on it and really just thinking without, when I'm making my vision board, not going to vision board examples or vision board photos, like really being like, what do I want if I really think about it? And then going to find something that matches or I don't know, just kind of, yeah, pulling from within first, I think is kind of like the next step in that jealousy piece.
I love that. And on that, our next step, we'll be talking through some of our 2026 New Year's goals in 1 or 2 weeks. I can't remember when this episode is going live, but around January 1st, we will be posting our New Year's goals episode where we'll be kind of talking about how to do just that and really thinking through what you actually want out of this upcoming year. Because, like you said, it has to come from within. But with that, I think we're out of time. We yapped for so long. So if you have any other questions or anything related to what we talked about in today's episode, definitely leave them in Spotify because at the end of the month, we always do a monthly Q&A episode where we recap a lot of the questions that you guys left us in Spotify. So definitely leave those in Spotify. And thanks for tuning into the podcast. And until next week.